And good morning, everyone. I am super pumped for today. I'm pumped today because I have a message to the young bloods. I've spent, again, a lot of time as a youth pastor, and I saw this as a youth pastor, but I myself was a young blood. What are young bloods? And what is the magical work that needs to be done? And how is it different than the grind? We're also going to cover 5 principles that I think I'm going to actually put into a book, and I would love to hear from you if you would want to see it in a hardback book. We should talk about that. But it is it is critical that you understand young blood, and this is to you, young person who's on fire and ready to rock or has their own vision of the world. You need to stay on fire, but you need to hedge your energy so it goes the right directions. So we're going to cover the magical work versus the grind and the 5 principles for that. I'm going to share with you my favorite author today. And I love my favorite author because he exudes what I would call pure magical work. And we're obviously going to do other news, but I only want to do a brief piece of other news. Good morning, Rut. I hope you're doing fantastic, man. You must be up early on the West Coast, brother. I'm only going to cover one piece of other news, and that one piece of other news has been hand-selected because it parlays into the lesson of what I want to say to young bloods. Here, let me actually write this down. What I want to say to young bloods today. Because there's a lot of fire in our gut. There's a lot of desire for success. There's a lot of desire for achievement, especially at a young age, but at all ages. And there's a lot of things going on in the marketplace that we're going to talk about. And I want to not just hedge this, I want to enrich it and empower it and channel this energy so that you can get to the magical work, the work that fulfills your soul, the work that makes you happy, the work that makes you a better person to be around. I want to get you to that magical work quickly. But before we do all of that, you know what time it is. Say it with me, friends. Say it in the comments. It is time for our morning cup of gratitude. I love it. It's like sitting around at a coffee shop downtown with my 4, 5, 6 favorite people and sharing what we're grateful for. And if you're watching this any time of day, put in the comments what you're grateful for. If I don't hear what you're grateful for, how do I know you're a person of gratitude? And why are we even friends if you're not a person of gratitude? I'll tell you what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for 2 things. Number 1, the 25 minutes I testified to you the other day that I spent on the phone just calling people, just connecting with my network, connecting with the riches. And yesterday or the day before, I was grateful for having an extraordinary network of power players, people doing magical work, people having a great uplifting paradigm. And I was just so grateful for that I shared that yesterday. I spent about 25 minutes just calling them and talking to them. I spoke to them and I got about, I think it's 3 new speaking deals, a potential new website deal, but more than anything, I took a shower in my soul. I was uplifted and rejuvenated from those encounters. So today, what I'm still grateful for is that 25 minutes I spent that I recommend you spend. Literally pick up the phone, scroll through your Rolodex, and when there's someone in there who's been uplifting to you in the past and encouraging to you and celebrates you in the past, just call them and say, hey, I was thinking about you. What are you up to? That's all it has to be. You don't have to make a deal. You don't have to throw a ton of value. You could just let them know, hey, I'm thinking about you. I just wanted to catch up. What are you doing? And magic will happen from that. So I'm grateful for that. The other thing I'm grateful for, you know what? No, let's just leave it at that. I'm grateful for you people out there doing that. I encourage you today. Tell me in the comments who you're going to call. Let us talk. Let me know who you're going to connect with today that enriches your soul. So let's talk about our brief piece of other news. Here we go. In other news, I wanted to talk, which I'll talk tomorrow, about space selfies. And I wanted to talk about yet another Spain botched restoration, but I'm not going to talk about that today. I want to talk about those things because they're fun, and that'll be in tomorrow's other news. Today, I want to zero in on one piece of other news. An extraordinary genius has published a book, and you need to watch it or read it. Watch it. Freudian slip. Another genius has launched another phenomenal book, and you need to read it. Seth Godin has launched The Practice. Now, I am a raving fan of Seth Godin's work. I've been following Seth Godin since before he even had Alt MBA, and a lot of you have been following Seth Godin now for years. I acknowledge that. I mean, boom, poke the box right there. I remember when Purple Cow first came out, and I tore that book up. I'm loving this book because of the subtitle, Shipping Creative Work. So if you've ever read Seth Godin, he and Stephen Pressfield are friends. Stephen Pressfield is absolutely my favorite author. Stephen Pressfield, and he's alive, bless God. He is absolutely my favorite. In fact, I need to capture that. I need to have him on the show. I want to connect with this guy. This guy is almost what I would call a virtual mentor for me. He wrote the book Gates of Fire. This was a novel. And that novel was then parlayed into a comic book called 300 by not Frank Castle. I'll come up with the name, but the comic book 300. Also, the author also did Sin City. It's a very gritty style of comic book. And as we know, that turned into the blockbuster film known as 300. Seth Godin and Stephen Pressfield are of a similar tribe. They're a similar warrior class. And I call them warrior class because they don't just focus on the grind. They don't just focus on the work. They don't expect the world to pay them for their knowledge. They don't expect the world to pay them for even the work they do with that knowledge. They expect the world to reward them for extraordinary output, channeling all their energies. And at the same time, they don't even do it for those reasons. They do it for something deep, intrinsic inside of them. So this is a piece of other news today. And it's a piece of other news because I wanted to parlay into something I have been observing out there in the world. Within my own team, within other teams, within coaching clients, I am observing, and I've been trying to address this in many different ways. We talked about leadership in an accelerated marketplace. We're not talking about that today. I want to talk to you about something much more serious and much more spiritual. Here, let me actually pull up my notes here. Much more serious and much more spiritual that I think you need to hear. So I want to talk and parlay now. Now we're getting into today's lesson that I really want you to stick around for. And I wanted to get into the meat of this because I know a lot of you have to dip out of here roughly around 7 and really get your lives going. So I want to get into this. I was reading Seth Godin's About page, and I recommend you do this. I read his blog many mornings, as many of my peers do. I also read Stephen Pressfield's blog many mornings. I was reading Seth Godin's biography, and here's just a few highlights. Seth Godin wrote for 10 years before his blog exploded. After publishing, we know him for some of his books, Poke the Box, The Dip, All Marketers Are Liars was one of his books. I have a ton of his material floated. Tribes was a phenomenal, life-changing book for me that he wrote. Phenomenal books. Did you know that he published 120 books? 120 books. Here, I'm actually going to write this out. It takes at least 120 books before you get published. If you read his bio, he shares it took him 120 published book from the late 80s right up until the early 2000s before one of his books was published. He also had an estimated, hear this, oh my God, this is mind-blowing. It took an estimated 6,000 rejection letters, 500 rejection letters a year, plus 900 rejection letters on one book alone to get a manuscript published. He was writing for Fast Company at the time. He wrote a weekly newsletter. He had created multiple video games and publications before he actually had his first successful book called, and not many people even remember it, Permission Marketing. Now, mind you, he wasn't a schlub. He had launched Prodigy when Prodigy came out in the early internet days. He had launched a wildly successful internet site at the time called Squidoo. He had actually worked with Asimov to launch a series of books for Asimov. He worked with Nintendo to launch a series of novels for Nintendo. This guy was not a schlub. He was not small fry. And it still took him, at minimum, 120 books writing before a manuscript got done, and the world didn't even pay him for that work. It didn't even make a dime. It wasn't until, and on top of that, he didn't just have to make the work, he then had to promote that work, and it took nearly 6,000 rejection letters before a publisher would even look at that work. Stephen Pressfield, my favorite author, as I mentioned before. Stephen Pressfield, at age 29, moved into a cottage to try to finish his book. You see, 6 years before that, he was married. And while he was married, he spent 2 years trying to write a book, and he came to the ultimate finish line and choked. He choked so hard. He choked so hard that he lost his wife, lost his family, and said to himself, I am now either going to finish one thing in my life that's extraordinary or I am going to kill myself. Lisa Welsh jumps in and says, never compare where you are to someone else's journey. Lisa, this is teeing us up for exactly what I'm talking about today. If I had a message for young bloods, it's Lisa's message right now. Young blood, work hard. Young blood, set that vision for those hard goals. Be awesome. Do all the things, but also never forget. Do not compare your today with someone else's year 10. Thank you, Lisa. That is an extraordinary message. Never compare your today to someone else's year 10. And more than that, and I'm going to get into this, recognize to everyone around you and the other warrior class around you, recognize that you're in the trenches too. If you look at the people who are on year 10, I want you to see them as warrior class. I want you to see them as Amazon Wonder Woman warriors. I want you to see them as Spartan warriors who are sitting in the trenches all scarred up from 10 years of war, and you're looking at them, raising your dander, expecting the rewards. Now, if you don't like the battle, get somewhere else. But if you want what these people have, you've got to check yourself. Stephen Pressfield said, I've got to finish at least one extraordinary thing, or literally, I'm going to kill myself. He said he needed to maintain control of himself. Now, hear this. He then dug in and started to fall in love with the work, not the rewards. Rut says, don't compare, outwork. Rut, you are genius. Rut says, don't compare, outwork. And here's the thing about outworking. Let's say you work 10 hours a day and I work 5 hours a day. If I get the core result in 5 hours and you don't get it in 10, you don't deserve more than me. Outwork does not just mean you're at the table. This is the message of the grind. You're at the table. You do need to be at the table. Good morning, David. Thanks for checking in. I hope you're doing fantastic, sir. Just because you're at the table and grinding doesn't mean you're producing the work. So there are like 3 tiers here. The knowledge, the world doesn't give a crap. I'm sitting at the table doing the work for 10 hours. And though that's necessary, you don't need to complain about that. Ultimately, then you also need to produce excellence, work that matters. Not just work that matters. So you're right. Don't compare, outwork, Rut. That's a fantastic truth. So let's go back to this story real quick. I don't know if you know Stephen Pressfield. I know him. You might know 300. I know him because I have read nearly all of his novels, even the crap ones. He has crap novels, but hear this. He wrote for 17 years. When he was ready to kill himself, he began to fall in love with the work again. And in falling in love with the work again, he realized he didn't need to kill himself. The success itself was the work. And there was some weird spirituality. Yes, I need to make more money. Yes, I still want to travel the world. Yes, I want to find a partner who I fall in love with. But I also have this lion in my chest, which is a phrase I use quite often. Something bubbling and gurgling in me. I know for Rut Patel, it's building Voyager to a global company. There's something bubbling in him, and it's not. And if I were to share coffee over in California where he's at right now or out west, we would probably laugh because yes, this goal absolutely has to occur. But at the same time, it's not about that. It's something expressing, gurgling like a lion in his chest. Rob Boudreau says, work smarter, not harder, but work hardest when it's time to work. You know, this is Robert Joe's thing. Work smarter, not harder, but work hardest when it's time to work. Listen, folks, and today's story is probably surrounded by a lot of gray hairs. Rob Boudreau and I had a glorious meeting yesterday, and I am so enriched with that meeting. I love the fact that I'm surrounded by warriors like Rob like that, and he's got grays on his little chinny chin chin. I know that he's put in the work. So this message is for young bloods, but I love the fact that there's other voices here, people putting in the work. And it's not just about the work. It's not just about the grind. There's something else. And just like Rut Patel wants to build Voyager and into a global company, and I know he will, and I hope to be his friend when he does. But he and I could both laugh and agree, it's not about that. It's about me manifesting some spiritual, deeper truth coming up in me. Stephen Pressfield learned this, and let me finish this story, and let me give you my 5 principles, and I'll let you go. Stephen Pressfield wrote for 17 years before he earned a penny because he learned to fall in love with the work. And that was sold for about, I think, $3,500 as a screenplay to a film that was never produced. You have this 17-year holding your breath, and someone gives you a meager $3,500, and you're like, maybe it's something. And then it's nothing. So what did he do? Did he actually kill himself? No, he's still around, right? He continued to write another 10 years, 27 years later, before he got his first published novel. Can you name that novel? I'll give you 10 seconds. The Legend of Bagger Vance. The book, The Legend of Bagger Vance, is a soul-searching, epic novel. It'll change your life. And if you watch the movie does it justice. The movie does it extraordinary justice to the message going on. And I will pull a few anecdotes from Legend of Bagger Vance. These two people that I call geniuses never stopped trying to produce work. They never stopped working. They might have compared themselves, but they never stopped working. And when those works, those 120 books by Seth Godin, those 27 years by Stephen Pressfield, when those works did not make them millionaires, did they point at the world in blame? Did they say, you don't understand me? They might have felt it, but they turned right around and started working on the next magical work. You see, this is the deception of the grind. So I think a lot of the young bloods out there want it and want it now. I say that because I wanted it and I wanted it now. And all of the ancients that I was listening to, all the mentors said, listen, I'm not trying to deflect you. I'm trying to get your focus on the work that matters. A lot of us are focused on the rewards, not the work that matters. And the reason, I think a compounding reason, is that we misunderstand grind. Today's grind message is part of the accelerated marketplace. There's this message that grind means catching up, rushing, getting a lot of hours under the belt. You do need to get a lot of hours under your belt. Jessica, good morning. I hope you're doing great. Thanks for stopping in. You do need to get hours under your belt. You absolutely do. But that's only to hammer and shape your soul so that you can be refined and your genius can actually come out. The hard work and the grind needs to occur, but not because it produces rewards, but because it removes mental baggage. In this accelerated marketplace, one of the top traits that's irreplaceable is patience. Yes, I need you to do what I asked you to do. And I need you to trust that what I'm asking you to do will get us there. But I need you to have patience. You can't be around other aged warriors and looking left and right at the Wonder Woman warriors and the Spartan warriors and looking at them and going, you guys need to hurry this thing up. You're going to get killed on the battlefield. We need patience. Patience is a sign of wisdom. We think that because the market is accelerated, the reward should be accelerated too. You know, the big problem, me and Rob were talking a little bit about this. I was also talking to James Joseph about this on Tuesday. The big wave of depression and malaise we see coming, the big wave of depression and malaise that we see coming is going to happen not because everyone is poverty-stricken. It's going to happen because there's going to be a massive dissonance between what they expect to come and what is coming. Rob and I talked a little bit about one particular nuance of this, but what I think is this. I think as technology comes and makes 3D printed homes will cost you virtually nothing. And when biotech and 3D printing and AI come together and can 3D print your food, we will have, for lack of a better term, basically what Star Trek replicators. It's not the magic, but it'll 3D print your food. It'll be tasty. It'll be yummy, but you won't have to work for food and you don't have to work for the roof over your head. Technically, you won't have to work. So you're going to be faced with a question, and that is what the hell was I working for before? And if you are faced with this malaise and this existential crisis, which I think will come in our lifetime to a lot of young people, they'll be faced with the fact that they were wanting the magic rewards for free right now instead of finding fulfillment in the work. And what happens in young people, because this, anyone with gray hairs on their head or in their chinny chin chin know that young people think that everyone around them is trying to hold them down. Listen, young blood. Remember, today's show's for the young blood. Listen, young blood. We're not trying to hold you down. And if I could speak to my own self 10 years back, 20 years back, listen, young blood Grant, I'm not trying to hold you back. I'm trying to get all this fire in your belly to be directed towards work, but work that counts. Terry says, be present in the moment. Enjoy where you are. Be present in the moment. Enjoy where you are. And fall in love with the process. Quit fighting. So here's my 5 principles. I cover all of that so that you see that when we talk about these 5 principles, they have context for you. And before I get into the 5 principles, let me give you a new definition for grind. And I'm going to tell this in the form of an anecdote. I want young blood Grant from 15, 20 years ago. Young bloods around me. Young bloods rising up in this new marketplace who are seeing a lot of like, what is my life about in this crazy ass world? And you want to fight the people around you. Cool your jets, young blood. Let me tell you a quick anecdote. Grind is not a child carrying water from the river. They were asked to go get water and they can go play with their friends who are off playing in the wheat field. You can go play with your friends in the wheat field once you grab the buckets, fill the buckets with water, and bring it back to the temple. So this young child is putting water in these buckets, seeing his friends play. He begrudgingly says, well, the ancients told me I got to go collect water. And they plod along to the river. They can still hear their friends laughing and throwing a ball and having fun in the wheat field, getting into mischief, and they just want to get into mischief. Looking at the girls, they just want to hang out looking at the girls. They fill their buckets with water, throw it on the shoulders, and begrudgingly walk to the temple. And the whole time, they're sloshing water because they're looking and watching their friends. They're sloshing water because they're looking and they're watching their friends. And eventually, they get back to the temple. They fill up the basin with the temple, and water is splashing everywhere. And the priest is looking at them, they think, with disdain. The priest is looking. And they're going, oh, this priest hates me. And then they dust off their hands and say, hey, listen, can I go play now? And the priest says, go on, young blood. Go on, young blood. Lisa Welsh says such a good message. Thank you, Lisa Welsh. Lisa Welsh says, my 18-year-old son wants to start a business and all he does is invest in Tesla stock. Hey, listen, young blood, I'm not against you investing in no Tesla stock, but that takes 5 minutes. Go to work. I had someone say, hey, I don't want to do sales. I'd rather do advertising. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we can put ads out and it does this. And I could do that instead of sales. It's a much better use of my time instead of meeting with clients and sitting with clients. And similar to Lisa Welsh's son, I said, hey, listen, the Facebook ad is out. Now can we go do sales? Why is it either or? Can we not do both? Can we not do both? So yes, Lisa, to your young blood, hey man, Tesla's a good stock. Watch for SpaceX if it ever goes public, right? But my dear young man, let's go out and do work that matters. So back to the story of the young kid. He dusts his hands off and he says, hey, can I go play with my friends? And the priest looks at him. The young person thinks the priest looks at him with disdain. The young priest looks at him and says, fine, go play with your friends. That was me, young blood. And that's you. Right? So the alternative is this. Grind is not this young person who can't stand this work and doesn't even really know the context, and all they want to do is get the rewards. And even though we're seeing this used to only be like teens and early 20s, we're now seeing 20s and 30s. My friend Eli started like that. I started like that. It's getting older and older that young people, a phrase I've used recently in this context, we forget Aesop's fables. Why are you slaying the goose to get the golden eggs? Why don't you clean up its poop and wash its downy feathers and make sure that that goose feels nice? Because then them golden eggs will just keep coming. Better to breed the thing than to slay it. So let's contrast this to the priest that's carrying the water. The priest is following its empty buckets, and it sees young people in the field, and he looks and he goes, because he knows that's fun. And I loved that era of my youth. And he doesn't plod to the river. He walks lightly to the river because something's brewing in him. The priest fills up his buckets and adjusts it on his shoulders, and he knows it's going to take me a while to get these buckets of water to the temple, and I want every drop to count. So he watches his feet. He's walked this path many times, so he knows where he's going to stumble. So now and again, he lets joy fill up in his heart, and there's something brewing in him. And he walks back with the buckets of water, and he looks over, and the kids are playing in the field, and they look over and they see this crazy priest. They see this crazy priest looking at them with disdain. And in the priest's mind, he's looking, going, man, I love those years, and man, I love these years more still. And what I'm about to do is for these young bloods. So he walks on, and they misinterpret the look on his face. He walks on. He makes it to the temple, and very gently, he pours every drop into the basin. Every drop into the basin. And that wasn't even the grind. Young blood thought that was the grind. Now, because we're 10,000 years in the past, the priest actually takes the sin offering and the goat. And he cuts the sin offering, and he prays over the sin offering, imbuing the sins of the young people that they might even be incurring in the field. And he slays the goat, and it's messy, and it's stinky, and the goat is screaming. That's the grind. But something's brewing in him, and it might even make him a little nauseous still to this day. But that's the grind. And he slays the sin offering, and he does the rituals, and he does the chants, and all the while the picture of the young kids in the field and their families and their fathers. And he sees his whole village, and he imagines and envisions his whole village, and draws to him by sheer will, draws to him all of the wrong that they have done one another, and wills it into the sin offering. And with the spleen out and the intestines out and with the blood, and he then performs the offering, and the smoke goes up, and it tells the village, you're clean. And it's messy to him. So what does he do? He takes that water where every drop counts and rinses it and rinses it. He disposes of the sin offering and washes his hand. He dries his hand so there's no evidence of the blood, and he comes out, stands on the portico, looks at the young bloods playing in the field, and they just look at him. He's looking at us with disdain, and he's looking, going, I know the grind, and it's for you. That is the new definition for you of grind. It's the grind of the work because you know. And when you look, you know that they are even mistaking your looks, because that is what it means to be a young blood. Let me give you 5 quick principles, and then we could go. Number 1, please, for the love of God, young blood Grant, young blood you, please, for the love of God, discover work you love. Not just work or labor or a job, but these are the medium within which you can refine and hammer and extract your unique genius. You see, inside your soul somewhere in some untouched place, and I don't know how this even works, but inside of each of you, there's a swinging mechanism of momentum, almost like the metronome. It's swinging inside of you, waiting for a song. There's movement inside of you. And when you find work you love, somehow that metronome clicks into today's environment. Something eternal clicks into something natural and temporal, and you start falling in love with the work. When you are young, discover the work you love. Experiment with roles and move through them, but do not be deceived that they are the thing for you. Make friends along the way instead of enemies. The people to your left and right are not your enemies. The people imposing restrictions on you and things on you, we're not your enemy. We've just been here a little bit longer, my friend. Feel free to move through jobs and work and quit having to just grind at one thing. Grind doesn't mean you stick at one miserable thing. Not everyone in the village is the priest. Not everyone in the village is the author. Give yourself freedom to discover work you love and to say, hey, this isn't the work that's clicking with my spiritual metronome. It's a mechanism where your spiritual metronome is swinging and it's looking for a way to manifest in the material. And when you mature enough to grab onto work, it clicks in, and then in reality, things change for the better. Number 2, once you discover the work you love, do the work you love. Not grind like we described, but grind like we're describing the magic work. If you even need a new term, use the term magic work. A blacksmith. And what I mean by this is there is laborious work, but to one person, it's magic. To another person, it's the child carrying the water buckets. A blacksmith spends hours at the furnace. What do they have to show for it? Smelt burns, singed hair. An author spends hours staring at a blank page, juggling a second job to pay for their standard of living while they write. A web developer has to learn code, watch YouTube videos. The internet's always changing, so they're hacking solutions, rigging the design. An entrepreneur sits across from team members, employees, potential clients, vendors, and negotiates and finds out what those needs are. It's grind and might not be your thing if you cannot help but see it the way the child sees carrying water. If you can sit in the moment and go, all of this is temporal, none of this matters, but I am loving the process. You might have a hint that you're at the work you want. Once you discover your work, though, do the work of that thing. Stephen Pressfield has a book, and the title of that book is called Do the Work. It's beautiful. Number 3, stay humble. Grow open. You see, the further I got into my work, the work of coaching, the work of business development, and I add a few things to that as I go, the more you get into that work, the more you could have some arrogance. Arrogance is a brief period of time that young people destroy themselves against in all the right ways. Young blood, stop being so arrogant. Young blood Grant, stop being so arrogant. Young blood in your life, stop being so arrogant. I am experienced, and I do know, and I'm really not being arrogant myself, because the more experienced you get, the humbler you get. Knowing is overrated. Doing is much better. Doing extraordinarily well and putting out extraordinary work. Not just putting out work. Putting out extraordinary work. And what is the secret sauce that peppers that extraordinary work? Love for the work. Love for the work. Not just the fact, well, Grant, I did another 2 hours. Or Lisa Welsh, I put in an extra 3 hours. What do you want from me? I don't want your extra 3 hours. I want your extra 3 minutes of love. Put love into your work. Put love into your work. Number 4, know that the work is not the product. The work itself is not the product. Don't deceive yourself that the world will pay you for the hours you put in for long, for the hours you put in front of the furnace, for the hours you put at the typing page, for the hours you put into coding, to the hours you put into speaking and training and selling clients. The world will not pay you for long for that. You need to take it further. The world will not bestow success on you for just finishing the new metalwork, finishing the new novel, finishing the new website, actually closing the sale. The world will give you a token gesture. But the success you're looking for, the bursting joy that you want in your work, young blood, the world's not going to pay you for that. The work is not the output. It's of the 120 books Seth Godin wrote, that one was really good. It was of the 27 years of words on paper that Stephen Pressfield put in. It was that one 50,000 word novel that finally clicked. And he wrote a book since and it bombed. Once you make it, you don't make it. Old bloods know that. Young bloods don't. You have to keep stepping up because other young bloods are coming up. Young bloods keep you sharp. You have to know, number 4, you have to know that the work is not the product. An extraordinary piece of the last dozen or so you've done, that is what the world and success comes from. Number 5, you have to know that success is not making it. Success is a spiritual journey. 2 examples of this. Number 1, I talked about Rut Patel. I've got a lot of respect for what Rut does. Rut has really blown up and really grown. And I remember sitting with coffee with Rut a few times. If you don't know Rut Patel, he's in the comments. You need to reach out to him and get to know him and say, hey, Rut is powerful. He does the work. He even struggled with articulation. We were even toying once with doing some articulation coaching because he has an Indian accent. But he has been extraordinarily successful, and it doesn't even matter. He's rendered that completely irrelevant because he was pitching a lot of rich white men in the energy space for his drone work. It doesn't matter when you find your groove. Rut, I believe, has found his groove. Let me give you another small example from The Legend of Bagger Vance. If you're not familiar with his book, you have to read it. Rob, if you're still watching, I really recommend you read this book. Legend of Bagger Vance, there is a guy who was a golf pro when he was young, and he's lost his swing. He can't find it. So out of nowhere, a caddy known as a bagger, Bagger Vance, shows up, and he's a black man. And at the time this takes place, segregation was still a deal. Bagger Vance comes along and starts speaking wisdom into this guy's life. And there's a moment where Matt Damon is just swinging, and trying to hit this ball. And Will Smith plays Bagger Vance, and Will Smith says, you got to find your authentic, hear the word, you got to find your authentic swing. Terry says Rut is an impressive young blood. Yes, he is. So what is an authentic swing? And why does this matter? We think this is a golf reference. Believe it or not, it's a spiritual reference. You got to find your authentic swing. You see, Matt Damon was an angry player. He would get up there and he would whack the ball and go as far as possible. And over time, he worked a lot. He was a hard worker. He worked a lot when he was young. So he knows the skills inside and out. But that's not the magic. When he was young, he had his swing. But as he's gotten older, the skills have started to supplant the soul. And an authentic swing, if you imagine a golfer who's swinging and throwing their clubs, if you imagine a hacker who's going like this, if you imagine keyboard warriors that are getting angry behind the keys, if you imagine a blacksmith just hammering away and they're getting angry, yes, they're applying the skills. And yes, that thing might come out okay. But it's not just about hard work. It's about magic work. And magic work comes from somewhere deep. I've sat at my desk so many times, and part of the work is just sitting at the desk and typing. That is the work. And if you don't show up, the muse will not show up. So part of the work is just getting in the seat. And it is doing the repeated work of the magic, right? But once in a while, the heavens open up. And this is true. And I'm not speaking metaphorically. I mean it. The heavens open up. And you suddenly deliver magic. You have to nurture this. So Stephen Pressfield, writing Legend of Bagger Vance, wrote this, and there's an actual screenshot of his yellow pad notes of the Legend of Bagger Vance, and he talks about the authentic swing. And in the side note, this is secret. Not many people know this, so if you're watching, turn the volume down and lean in. Stephen Pressfield writes in the parentheses about the authentic swing scene. He's writing the authentic swing scene. And he writes in the notes, this points to previous lives. This points to previous lives. What is he talking about? What he's talking about is this. You can hit the strongest swing. You can hit the most accurate swing. And you will win the coveted cup. But it's not until you'll hit your authentic swing that you're going to hit and every ball will just feel like glory. What is your authentic swing? The reason Stephen Pressfield said that this was previous lives is he was trying to point out that you need to approach the work as sacred. You need to approach the work as sacred. The grind is the grind when you're hateful. I just want this to produce. I want blood from a stone. I want this to have an output for me. Maybe you'll get there, young blood. People can point to Elon Musk and say, see, Elon Musk is doing it. No, I think you're missing something about Elon Musk. This is Elon Musk's authentic swing. The reason we talk about previous lives is not necessarily because we're actually talking about reincarnation. Maybe we are, maybe we're not. That's irrelevant. What Stephen Pressfield is trying to make you see is that as something as innocuous as a golf swing, there's a zen where you let go of your constrained mind and you relax and you release. And you first and foremost tap not skill, but joy. I love this swing. This swing is everything. And in this moment, all there is this swing. Joy. Then you access. You roll your shoulders and then you access the skills. And then you say, wherever this ball lands, let's try to make it land in the hole. And you're full of joy and you hit that ball and you turn away and you don't even look to where it lands. Not necessarily because it's a hole in one, but because you did your part. You showed up with knowledge. You ground out the skills, but you applied joy. Youngblood Grant. Success isn't making it. Whoop, my page is scrolling. Success is not making it. Success is a spiritual journey. Stephen Pressfield wanted you to look at the work as a temple and sacred. And he wants you to look as the people around you and the old blood speaking to you as collaborators and co-priests. We are not trying to glorify work of any kind, and hopefully the work that you love today. It's not even about golf. It's not even about the work you do today. That is the medium, the material that the metronome of your spirit is going to grab in this lifetime and try to manifest what the world needs. This is why they say don't go out and find what John Eldridge, I think, Rob quoted him yesterday, don't go out and seek what the world needs. Go out and seek what makes you alive. Because what the world needs is people that are alive. Young blood. Here we go. Let's cover these. Hang on. Number one, take time to discover what you love. Don't make enemies, make friends. Feel free to move through jobs as you learn what clicks with you. Number two, then do the work with love. Do the work you love with love. Love it. Love the challenge, love the conversations, love it. Number three, stay humble. Stay humble. Grow open. I can't tell you how many people do find their calling young, but get tripped up because of lack of humility, lack of respect. Number four, know that the work is not the product, and the world will not pay you for what you know. The world won't even pay you for the hours you put in. The world will pay you for the magic you produce. If it's in business, it's sales. If it's in carpentry, Dan Sampson, it's a finished piece. And not just a finished piece, but a magic piece. Put magic in what you do. And number five, success is not even about making it. Success is about the spiritual journey. And guess what? You don't have to wait 20 years. If you can release your mind, if you can unwind, if you can relax, if you can connect with your authentic swing, you can experience success right now. And the rest is just getting money. Hey, listen, I got to go and enjoy this morning with my wife. I hope this has been helpful to you. If you want to hear more about this, or if you think I should put this into a book or an ebook or something, let us know. I want that feedback. If you want something like this to hand to your kid, if you want something like this to hand to a young blood of any age, someone who's young-blooded, spirited, and they're just not applying their energy in the way it should, I want to hear about it. I want to hear what's helpful and empowering to you. In the meantime, if you need any help at all, you know where to hit us. The Facebook Goals and Gratitude Group, thestateofthespark.com. But you know what I want you to focus on today instead of that. Igniting lives of explosive significance, starting with